Chapter 3252. A Good Romance. BQG 6. Ling Han was shocked. Yang Jun really had a long life. Even if he was a formation genius, he was still only at the illuminating pulse realm, and he still managed to escape. There was no justice in this world. But that was good. He could deal with it personally. Ling Han no longer paid attention to Yang Jun. He had not taken Yang Jun seriously before, and he would not take him to heart now. He discovered that basically all the ultimate Bone Realm clans had people who had escaped. Not all, that was impossible, but there were at least a dozen. On the contrary, the number of Blood Transformation Realm clans that had escaped was much smaller. For example, in order to send Tuoba Tianhuang out, the Tuoba family had even lost 2 Blood Transformation Realm cultivators. Precisely because of this, Ling Han found it strange how Yang Jun had managed to escape. The formation and alchemy associations were almost completely wiped out. Ling Han discovered that Yang Jun was the only one who had survived. Alchemists were weak in battle, and those at the same cultivation level were terrible to look at. So, it was not strange that the alchemy association had been completely wiped out. But that group of people from the formation path should be slightly stronger, and yet none of them had managed to escape. Not knowing how old man Nyo was, Ling Han was a little worried. He did not have much feelings for others, but he was still somewhat grateful to old man Nyo. And Mo Guohao, he actually did not manage to escape. Ling Han shook his head, feeling that it was a pity. All in all, Hidden Tiger City was really tragic this time. Out of a total population of more than 400,000, only 100 people had escaped alive. This matter naturally shocked the court and caused a huge uproar. But Ling Han believed that they should not be able to find out that it had anything to do with that mysterious faction. Alright, let's put the focus on myself first. Ling Han had always been thinking about why he had not broken through to the blood transformation realm, and he gradually had an idea. If it were an ordinary person, let alone a month, even 10 years would not be a rush, because the step from the illuminating pulse realm to the blood transformation realm was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. But Ling Han's expectations of himself were too high, and he also had a strong desire for power. In these few days, he did not cultivate, but was deep in thought. He speculated that the reason he hadn't broken through wasn't because his perception wasn't good enough, but because his physique wasn't up to par. There were a few times when he was clearly able to take that step, but because of some misgivings in his heart, he stopped. What I pursue is the strongest. Therefore, when I feel that I still have some flaws in my heart, it will turn into an inner demon at a critical moment like breaking through, preventing me from taking that step. There's only one way to get rid of your inner demons, and that's to make yourself perfect. I want to improve my physique. Ling Han restarted his research on the indestructible Heaven's Scroll. Previously, he already had some clues, and after some careful pondering, he already had a perfect idea. Refining the body requires a lot of materials. I've created a medicinal bath that can strengthen the skin, muscles, and bones. He immediately went to the pharmacy to buy the ingredients. This was concocted by combining the indestructible Heaven's Scroll with the medicinal ingredients here. There were a few medicinal ingredients that were shockingly expensive, and one tael would be worth 100,000 Xianbei coins. Although Ling Han had earned some money later on, he could only concoct a few sets. I still have to continue earning money. Ling Han bought a few sets of ingredients and almost used up all the money he had, causing him to shake his head, feeling that he was so poor. He returned to the hotel and began to concoct the ingredients for the medicinal bath. This didn't need to be concocted, and only needed to be boiled. However, the time required was even longer. After more than 4 hours, a black pot was finally cooked, and the smell was extremely pungent. Ling Han poured the medicinal bath into the bathtub, and without waiting for it to cool down, immediately sat down. The hotter it was, the better the tempering effect would be. He circulated the improved version of the indestructible Heaven's Scroll, absorbing the energy in the medicinal bath to strengthen his skin. Flesh and blood still wouldn't do, but that was a matter for the future. As he continued to absorb the essence in the medicinal bath, the water became clearer and clearer from its original black color. After 3 hours, there was only a faint gray color left, and the pungent smell had completely disappeared. My skin has become much tougher. Ling Han nodded, and used a small knife to lightly cut his skin. However, the skin only slightly sunk, and didn't break open. Only when he forcefully stabbed did the tip of the knife sink in, and a spot of blood appeared. The first time tempering the body was the best, because it was practically starting from zero, so the improvement was obviously great. Unfortunately, just like alchemical pills couldn't be taken continuously, tempering the body was the same, because the medicinal dregs would seep into the skin, and needed time to naturally expel them, which was far longer than taking them orally. For example, secret power pills could be taken once a day, but medicinal baths could only be taken once every 3 days. Unless there's a natural treasure that doesn't have any side effects and can be taken continuously. Ling Han sighed. Don't think blindly, and just concoct pills to earn money. Even if he could only take a medicinal bath once every 3 days, the ingredients in his hands wouldn't last him too many times. Young master, young master. Huan Shui hurriedly ran in. Of course, she was definitely still carrying that perverted pig in her arms. What's the matter? Ling Han asked. He had Huan Shui walk around the city more often to scout for information. Look. Huan Shui handed over a piece of paper. Ling Han took it and looked. On it was written that the Emperor Capital Academy would start accepting applications today, and the selection would begin 10 days later. Emperor Capital Academy, what the hell was this? Young master, the Emperor Capital Academy is the most powerful academy in the entire Xianbei country. The little maid had obviously inquired about it. She explained, in the past, the Emperor Capital Academy only accepted noble students. This is the first time they've made an exception and enrolled students from the outside. Also, the selection is to enter an ancient formation to find the red cloud stone. This is a sacred item for tempering the body, and it's extremely precious. Apparently, this is the will of the Saint Emperor. In the future, he might even go to the academy to personally instruct them. Chem red cloud stone, sacred medicine for tempering the body. Ling Han's eyes immediately lit up. Did he really get what he lacked? He turned on his optical computer and searched for information related to the red cloud stone. This was indeed a sacred item for tempering the body. It didn't need to be used in medicine, and as long as it was placed next to the flesh, the mysterious power in the stone would automatically enter the body and strengthen the vitality of the cells, achieving the effect of tempering the body. It was said that one of the 4 great marshals, General King Kong, obtained a piece of red cloud stone as tall as a person at the beginning of the world's upheaval. He slept on it every day and finally cultivated an invincible body. However, this kind of opportunity only existed at the beginning of the upheaval. The probability of finding the red cloud stone now was extremely low, and it was also extremely dangerous. Ling Han revealed a look of surprise. If he could obtain enough red cloud stones, then he would be able to complete the first stage of tempering the body and break through to the blood transformation realm. Had his luck attribute shown its power? Let's go register. He immediately set off with Huan Shui. After leaving the hotel, he directly called for a car, saving time and effort. Half an hour later, they arrived at the Emperor Capital Academy. The entire Emperor Capital was in the shape of a dragon bearing its fangs and brandishing its claws, and the Emperor Capital Academy was right on its front right claw. The academy was very big, and it was surrounded by white walls. One could clearly see the light of the formation flickering. This meant that if one tried to force their way in, not only would they not be able to enter, they would also very likely die. Ling Han got off the car and couldn't help but grimace. This place was really crowded. Reading on the phone was more refreshing. Chapter 3253. A Good Romance. BQG 6. CC Emperor Capital Academy was open to the public for the first time, and it immediately caused a surge in applications. One had to know that His Majesty the Sacred Emperor would occasionally come to the academy to teach. Being able to see His Majesty the Sacred Emperor was a huge motivation for everyone. Especially in the imperial capital, the worship of the Sacred Emperor had reached a fanatical level. They all called him Sacred Emperor instead of His Majesty. Just queue up obediently. Luckily, under the Emperor's feet, no one dared to act recklessly and disobey the rules. Also, The descendants of the rich and powerful didn't need to rush this opportunity. Emperor Capital Academy was originally open to them. Ling Han queued for 3 hours before it was his and Huanshue's turn. Fingerprint. The person in charge of registration nodded towards Ling Han. Ling Han pressed his thumb on a glass panel, and immediately, his identity information was displayed on the optical computer. "Oh, you're a survivor of Hidden Tiger City," the person in charge said in surprise. Ling Han nodded. Age 18, cultivation 12 meridians. The person read the information and quickly finished his work. "All right, come back in 10 days for the selection." Ling Han nodded and changed to Huanxue. Age 19, cultivation 11 meridians. The person did his job. "Oh, you're also from Hidden Tiger City?" Soon, Huanshue's registration was completed. There were conditions for the registration. One had to be under 30, and their cultivation had to be at least 10 meridians. However, if they were at the blood transformation realm, they didn't need to participate in the selection and could directly become a disciple of the academy. I wonder if Flag Master Lian is here. With her age and cultivation, she should be able to enter the academy directly. But this way, I won't be able to fight for the Red Cloud Stone. Ling Han and Huanxue left and returned to the hotel. After Sun Jianfang returned, Ling Han told him that he was going to enter Emperor Capital Academy. The old sect master said that he was about to find a job and planned to move out of the hotel after a while. For the next few days, Ling Han concocted pills every day. He couldn't just sit around and eat. In addition, he would temper his body once every 3 days. His physique was steadily improving. The indestructible Heaven Scroll had a special characteristic, and that was that the effects of body refining were limited by one's cultivation level. In fact, the majority of cultivation techniques were like this. Thus, as long as one cultivated it to the point where there was no more room for improvement, it would mean that one had reached the pinnacle of the illuminating meridian tier, and Ling Han would be able to dispel his inner demons and attempt to break through to the blood transformation tier. 10 days passed by quickly, and Ling Han had a large number of pills in his hands. He was just waiting for the selection to be over before going to the pharmacy to sell them. He brought the little servant girl to the Imperial Capital Academy again, pressed his fingerprint to enter the academy, and then gathered with countless people in the square. There were at least 50 to 60,000 people here. At a glance, the place was densely packed with human heads. "I heard that only 100 people will be selected this time." "What? Only 100? 100 is so little. We have at least tens of thousands of people here. That's 1 out of a few hundred people." Many people were screened out during the registration process. Otherwise, there would be more people. So difficult? Not necessarily. I heard that the selection this time is to search for red cloud stones. When the time comes, the 100 people who find the most red cloud stones will directly win. So, if you find a red cloud stone and immediately hide until the selection is over, you might be able to win. If I can get a red cloud stone, then even if I can't enter the academy, it'll be worth it. Everyone was discussing the selection this time. Ling Han didn't need to deliberately ask around to understand clearly. He yawned, appearing very listless. In terms of battle prowess alone, even an elite of the 5 changes had been killed by him. In the illuminating meridian tier, would he still have a match? Of course, there were other conditions for killing who can, but his battle prowess was at least on par with a 4 changes cultivator. This was without a doubt. So, he really couldn't raise his spirits. Later, he would only be bullying others. Suddenly, there was a great commotion in the crowd. "What's going on?" someone asked from the side. "Hong Tian Liang is here," someone answered. "Which Hong Tian Liang?" someone else asked. "Idiot, how many people are there in the imperial capital?" Hong Tian Liang is obviously that person's younger brother. Hiss. Hong Tian Liang still needs to participate in the selection. That's right, his senior grand tutor Hong's second grandson. He can directly enter the academy. You don't understand. He's here for the red cloud stone, otherwise he would definitely have broken through to the blood transformation realm. It's over. Now there's going to be 1 less spot. Nonsense. Although Hong Tianliang isn't as monstrous as that person, it's said that he opened all the hidden meridians in his body to use the red cloud stone to refine his body and then break through to the blood transformation realm. That means that even if he fails this time, he can still enter the academy after breaking through to the blood transformation realm? Of course. Moreover, with Senior Grand Tutor Hong's power, can't he send Hong Tianliang into the academy? Not to mention anything else, just because he's that person's younger brother, entering the academy will naturally be a piece of cake. Sigh, he's really lucky. Everyone sighed. They were both in their 20s, but the difference was like heaven and earth. Ling Han was also a little curious. There was indeed someone in the imperial capital who had also opened the 8 extraordinary meridians. Furthermore, from what everyone was saying, Hong Tianliang's older brother seemed to be even more amazing. Like the stars surrounding the moon, a young man walked over from afar. As long as he came close, the people in front would automatically open up a path for him. Hong Tianliang was a very handsome young man, but he was also incomparably arrogant and condescending. He didn't put anyone in his eyes. No one was unconvinced. Just because he was Senior Grand Tutor Hong's grandson, who dared to provoke him? More importantly, he had an extremely monstrous older brother. Even the Saint Emperor clicked his tongue in praise and personally commented, "Heavenly genius." Hong Tianliang strode over and stopped at the very front of the group. He stood alone, as if he didn't want to be in the same group as anyone else. After this little episode, there were no more sensational events. At around 10 in the morning, someone in charge of the academy came out and announced the details of the selection this time. The basic situation was what those people had discussed before. The time limit was 10 days. During these 10 days, food and lodging had to be carried out in the formation. During this time, prospective students were allowed to fight with each other. The winner could take the red cloud gem of the loser, but they couldn't intentionally injure or kill anyone. Otherwise, not only would they lose the right to enter the academy, but they would also be severely punished by the Empire's laws. Alright, let's begin. The formation opened, and a door appeared, flickering with a faint light. Everyone filed in. Many of them had the intention of snatching a red cloud gem and then hiding for 10 days. Thus, once they rushed in, they immediately used their movement techniques and quickly disappeared into the distance. When Ling Han entered the formation, it was already 10 minutes later. He sized it up. The Imperial Capital Academy was located at the right claw of the dragon. If one looked further, it would be high mountains and lofty ridges. Thus, this formation was also in the middle of the mountains. At a glance, it was like entering a primitive forest. Want to find a small red cloud gem here? Difficult phone reading is more refreshing. Chapter 3254. A Good Romance. BQG 6. See, there should be some sort of hint. Ling Han thought. Otherwise, even if there were 60 to 70,000 people, and even if he had 10 days, it was possible that only a few people would find the red cloud gem. He had no intention of finding the red cloud gem himself. Instead, he had long since made preparations to rob them. Since this is a formation, I'll come and study it. Ling Han walked around casually, but up until now, he still hadn't discovered anything special about the formation. Everything was as normal as usual. Ah! A cry of surprise came from ahead. The forest rustled, and very soon, he saw 8 people running over in an extremely sorry state. Then, he saw a fierce tiger appear. It was 15 feet long, and its size was extremely shocking. The speed of this ferocious tiger was extremely fast, and very soon, it caught up with the last person. It lowered its head and bit him, then with a fling, shua, that person was thrown out. Peng, he heavily crashed into a tree, and the tree was directly broken in half. Shua, it caught up with another person. This time, it waved its paw, and that person was instantly sent flying. He also crashed into a tree before stopping, moaning in pain. From the looks of it, even his arm seemed to be broken. They had not even begun to search for the red cloud gem, and they had already thrown away their helmets and armor. Ling Han saw clearly that this fierce tiger's strength should have surpassed 12 meridians, but had not reached 13 meridians. To the majority, this was indeed an incredibly terrifying existence. However, If 2 or 3 12 meridians joined forces, they should be able to deal with it. But these people only cared about running for their lives, and only wanted to escape from the tiger's mouth. In that case, they could only let this fierce tiger wreak havoc. Very soon, the 8 people became 5. When they reached Ling Han, there were only 2 people left. They rushed past Ling Han as if they were running for their lives. They did not want to participate in this selection anymore. They only wanted to escape. The fierce tiger rushed over, and Ling Han bore the brunt. Ang! The fierce tiger roared angrily, and swiped at Ling Han with its paw. Boom! A giant paw descended from the sky. Young master. Seeing that Ling Han did not dodge, Summon Snow hurriedly cried out. "Gu!" The little pink pig squealed. It was thrown out by Summon Snow, and drew an arc in the air. Summon Snow charged over and blasted a palm at the giant claw. Ling Han shook his head. Huanxue was no match for this fierce tiger. Although her progress was very fast and she already had 11 meridians, Huanxue was no match for this fierce tiger. He clenched his fist and punched upwards. The force reached the speed of sound, and a series of sonic booms rang out, turning into a very obvious fist imprint. Although it was launched later, it arrived first and blasted onto the giant claw. Peng! The ferocious tiger immediately exploded. How terrifying was the strength of 1,000,000 jin! Hey! Ling Han discovered that although the tiger had exploded, its flesh and blood did not splatter everywhere. Instead, it transformed into a flash of light and disappeared, and a red stone fell from the sky. Red marble as it turned out, the red cloud stone could be hidden in the body of a ferocious beast, and the ferocious tiger was actually a manifestation of a formation, not a real entity. Interesting, the red cloud gem might be in the grass and trees. Ling Han put away the crimson cloud stone and immediately began to absorb the stone's essence. He discovered that if he allowed the red cloud gem to act on its own, then the effect would only be 1. But after he circulated the indestructible heaven scroll, the effect would increase to 10, which was a shocking increase. Comfortable. Ling Han could feel that his cells were strengthening. This could not be seen from the outside, but the change was real. Little pig Huanxue finally remembered that in a moment of desperation, she had actually abandoned the little perverted pig. She hurriedly ran over to pick it up. The little perverted pig humphed. It was very angry. It had actually been abandoned by someone. This was practically a great humiliation to it. It was so cute, so who could bear to abandon it? Although it was picked up by Huanxue, it was still throwing a tantrum and was very stubborn. However, after Huanxue pressed onto its chest, its so-called dignity was immediately tossed beyond the highest heavens, and it began to freely enjoy itself. Ling Han advanced, while the little female attendant hurriedly followed behind. The 2 of them climbed over a tall mountain, and a lake appeared in front of them. It was very large, but it was still very far away from them. Looking at it from afar, the lake was like a mirror. "Let's rest by the lake tonight," Ling Han said. They had brought dry rations, but did not bring water. Huanxue naturally would not object, and only nodded repeatedly. They walked, and a wild boar appeared. This wild boar's physique was relatively normal, but it was very ferocious. After discovering the 2 of them, it immediately charged at them. Yi, this really was just an ordinary wild boar. Ling Han casually blasted out a wave of force, and this wild boar died and fell to the ground. "Ha, we'll have pork for dinner tonight," he said. Humph, humph. The little pink pig was very angry. This person actually dared to say that he wanted to eat pork in front of him. This was too audacious. "If you have the guts, then don't eat it," Ling Han said to the little pink pig. The little pink pig was proud. It was a pig with principles. The 2 of them continued forward. Some of the wild beasts that appeared here were illusions formed by formations, but some were real. However, whether they were real or fake, it was impossible to tell unless they fought. When they climbed over the mountain and arrived at the foot of the mountain, before they had even walked out of the dense forest, they heard the sound of footsteps coming from behind them. Ling Han turned his head to look, and saw a young man coming from behind. He looked to be about 16 or 17 years old, and he was slightly handsome. Seeing Ling Han look over, this young man smiled at Ling Han, revealing 2 rows of snow-white teeth. Xiao, his speed was very fast, and he quickly overtook the young man. Just as he was about to leave the dense forest, he heard a bang, and his whole body sank into the ground. What was going on? Ling Han was shocked. There was actually a trap there. A large pit that was about 4 to 5 feet deep had been dug out, and it was extremely steep. If it were an ordinary person, they could only be trapped in there and wait for rescue. However, if it was a martial artist, even if they could not jump out, the strength of their hands was terrifying, and they could forcibly punch a hole in the wall of the pit and slowly climb up. However, since someone had dug a pit here, it would definitely not be limited to this. Xiao, Xiao, Xiao. 3 young men flew down from the tree and stood beside the pit. Hey, 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 what is the meaning of this? The young man in the pit asked. Hand over the red cloud stone, and we'll let you out, a young man in black said from above. I just came in, where did the red cloud stone come from? The young man below said. You haven't even grown any hair, and you still want to lie to your uncle see, the young man in black snorted. Haven't grown any hair. The young man below did something that made people spit out rice. He undid his belt, and then took off his pants and underwear to his knees. Then, he said proudly, look, have you grown any hair? Immediately, the 3 young men above were petrified. How could there be such a person? Ling Han was also speechless. What was this young man's brain made of? The young man pulled up his pants and shouted, hurry up and apologize to me. Apologize for what? Just because I said that you actually have hair. Crazy. The 3 young men above all shook their heads. They felt that there was something wrong with this young man's brain, and it was better not to waste time on him. Reading on the phone is more refreshing. Chapter 3256. A Good Romance. BQG 6. See what was going on? Ling Han activated his mystic power and formed a shield. Hua, the waves crashed into him, but he was naturally completely unharmed. Cool Snow was far inferior. Her mystic power was not as strong, so she could only retreat and dodge. Ji Choling, on the other hand, also used his mystic power to block the waves. Only the little pink pig was unable to dodge or block. It was directly hit by the waves and was directly sent flying. Its body was also wet. It was enraged, and it began to squawk at the lake. Boom, the surface of the lake split open, and a huge creature appeared. This was a huge snake. It was impossible to tell how long it was, but just the part that emerged from the water was several dozen meters long, and it was as thick as a well. Just its size was enough to make people shiver. There were demonic beasts in the lake? Was this the real deal, or was it created by a formation? Haha, I'll fight. Ji Choling laughed loudly, and broke into a run towards the center of the lake. Pa, he stepped on the surface of the water, but he actually did not sink. This was because his speed was too fast. Just the little bit of tension on the surface of the water was enough to allow him to run without sinking. He had not yet reached the speed of sound, but the difference was not too great. This brat, perhaps he had already opened all 20 meridians. Ji Choling arrived, and his fist punched towards the huge snake. The huge snake did not dodge. It directly twisted its huge body to meet the punch, using its body as a huge club, and swung towards Ji Choling. Peng! With a loud sound, Ji Choling was instantly sent flying. Pu, he fell into the water. Without running at high speed, the water was naturally unable to support his weight. Ling Han's eyes lit up. This huge snake was actually in the blood transformation realm, and it was definitely not just at the first change. No matter what, it had to be at the second change. The huge snake coiled its body, and once again attacked Ji Choling. Ji Choling stretched out his hand and slapped the surface of the water. Peng! He immediately broke out of the water. He once again used high speed, madly sprinting on the surface of the water, waiting for an opportunity to find the huge snake's weakness. He had to run. Otherwise, if he was in the water, his movements would be too restricted. The giant snake chased after him, spitting out its red tongue and making a hissing sound that made people feel like they were in the wilderness. Although Ji Choling was a bit of a straight person, he wasn't stupid in battle. He knew that his strength was inferior, and he was on the opponent's home ground, so he didn't have the slightest intention of fighting head-on. Unable to catch up, the giant snake suddenly twisted its body. Boom! The entire surface of the lake instantly began to boil, forming huge waves. Ge Choling's body swayed unsteadily, and the waves in the lake caused his body to sway unsteadily as well. He almost lost his balance. After all, this was not land. The giant snake took this opportunity to charge over. Peng, Ge Choling could only take it head-on, and was once again sent flying. "Little brother Ge, let me do it," Ling Han said with a smile as he stood up. "Little brother." Ge Choling looked at the space between his legs. "We haven't even compared, so how do you know that I must be little brother?" Obviously, his brain circuit was wrong again. Ling Han charged over. He also stepped on the surface of the water as if he was walking on flat ground. Soon, he met the giant snake head-on and punched out. Demonic monkey fist, 20 stacked layers of strength. Ling Han didn't want to waste time on a demonic beast. A single punch would do. The giant snake was fearless, and charged at Ling Han. Peng, a heavy sound rang out, and the giant snake's huge body was sent flying. And at the place where the punch landed, a bloody hole the size of a washbasin had shockingly appeared. It was just a single strike, and its tough body was penetrated by Ling Han. However, the giant snake was too big, and this was not a vital point, so it wasn't killed in a single strike. Ling Han caught up. Pa, pa, pa. He ran on the snake's body, arrived at the snake's head, and landed a punch. Such a huge snake, where could he find its weak point? So, he directly exploded its head. The punch landed, and the giant snake's head was instantly blasted apart, turning into a ball of blood rain. It had originally bounced upwards, but the force of this punch was directed downwards. The two forces acted on the snake's body at the same time, and with a pa, the giant snake instantly broke in the middle. Ling Han's figure shot forward, and he quickly returned to the shore. An explosion rang out, kicking up huge waves. Ge Choling looked at him in a daze, and then he lowered his head to look at the space between his legs. He muttered, "If he's so badass, then he really might be bigger than me." Ling Han naturally heard this, and his mouth twitched. This youth's way of thinking was truly different from ordinary people. "From today onwards, you are my big brother," said Ge Choling with an incomparably serious expression. Ling Han couldn't help laughing. "If everyone you can't beat calls you big brother, then how many big brothers would you have?" Ge Choling seriously thought about it and said, "Only someone of the same realm and who can defeat me can be my big brother." Yes, he was quite principled. Ling Han pointed at the giant snake in the lake. "Then you clean it up. A blood transformation realm demonic snake definitely has quite a few good things on it." "Yes, big brother." Ge Choling's reply was very clear. He immediately jumped into the lake and dragged the giant snake out. If it had been Huanxue, she wouldn't have had such strength. This is a real snake that lives here. "Maybe there's some kind of treasure in the lake," muttered Ling Han. He immediately jumped into the lake and began to search carefully. The lake was very large, but Ling Han was very patient. In any case, he had 10 days, and he didn't want to search for the Red Cloud Stone himself. So he could use the last 1 or 2 days to carry out his robbery plan. If he held his breath now, he could maintain it for nearly half an hour. In addition, his swimming speed in the water was not slow, so half an hour was enough for him to search 1/3 of the area. In theory, he only needed to come up to the surface to breathe twice. Half an hour later, he came to the surface and took a deep breath. But he didn't find anything. He once again entered the lake and searched. After a while, he finally found something. There was a green stone at the bottom of the lake. There was actually a plant growing in a crack. It only bore a single fruit, and this fruit was actually a green gourd. Gourd. Ling Han swam over and reached out to touch the gourd. It was just a light touch. Pa, the gourd actually fell from the vine. Seeing that the gourd was about to float to the surface, Ling Han quickly reached out and grabbed the gourd. What was this thing? Could it be eaten? Ling Han thought about it and decided to go ashore first. He didn't need to study it underwater. He came to the surface and came ashore, but he saw 7 people lying on the ground. Seeing that we killed the giant snake, They wanted to intervene and rob the Red Cloud Stone, Ge Choling explained. But, there's no Red Cloud Stone, Huanxue said quickly. Ling Han nodded. Real demonic beasts shouldn't have the Red Cloud Stone. Otherwise, the effect would have long been absorbed by the demonic beasts. He sat down and began to study this green gourd. He always felt that this gourd shouldn't be simple. From the outside, he couldn't see the slightest difference. Ling Han probed with his divine sense and couldn't help but be surprised. Then, he revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. Inside the gourd, there was actually another space. Although it wasn't big, its length, width, and height were only about 3 meters. This was a spatial magic tool. It was more refreshing to read on a mobile phone. Chapter 3257. A Good Story. BQG 6. CISA Spatial Magic Tool. It's actually a spatial magic tool. Ling Han had always wanted a spatial magic tool, and he had looked it up on the optical computer. Yes, there was such a thing as a spatial magic tool, but the price had already been pushed up to a few $100 million Shenbei dollars. More importantly, there had never been a record of it being sold. Simply put, no one was selling it. Modern people didn't even know how to make normal magic tools, let alone spatial magic tools. Therefore, spatial magic tools could only be passed down from the previous civilization, but most of the historical sites of the previous civilization were under the protection of formations. There were pitifully few that could be developed. Therefore, it was difficult to obtain magic tools, and even more difficult to obtain spatial magic tools. Ling Han had already given up hope, and planned to wait until he was a little stronger before considering this problem. He didn't expect it to appear on its own. Spatial magic tools actually grew? Ling Han had a strange expression. This was different from the origin world's spatial magic tools. Not to mention the fact that they were much smaller. Most of them would be made into rings or necklaces for easy carrying. If he carried a gourd when he went out in the future, would people mistake him for a drunkard? Luckily, this gourd wasn't big, only half a foot tall. He could easily hold it with one hand, and just hang it on his waist. The Emperor Capital Academy definitely didn't know that there was a gourd vine growing at the bottom of the lake, and that it had produced a gourd with a spatial attribute. Otherwise, they would have plucked it long ago. Profited big time. Ling Han's expression didn't change, but his heart was wild with joy. This trip to the academy, even if he didn't obtain too many red cloud stones, it was already worth it. But, how should a spatial magic tool be used? He plucked a leaf, wrapped it with his divine sense, and then communicated with the gourd. With a whoosh, the leaf disappeared. If he used his divine sense to scan it, he would find that it was in the space of the gourd. The usage was actually the same. Now, he didn't have to carry a huge bag like a thief when he went out in the future. The only problem was that the space wasn't big enough. It was only the size of a small house. He felt a little regretful. If those people with spatial magic tools knew about this, they would probably jump out and point at his nose, scolding him for being greedy. One had to know that the existing spatial magic tools only had 3-dimensional space of about a foot. In comparison, the space of the green gourd was 1,000 times bigger. What did people use spatial magic tools to store? Precious pills, peerless ingredients, how much space would that require? But Ling Han's first move was a nature-defying existence like the Black Tower. It would not be an exaggeration to say that the entire lower realm could actually be contained in it. So, there would be no harm if there was no comparison. They rested by the lake. After the night passed, Call Snow woke up early in the morning to roast meat. After the three of them were full, Ge Choling bid farewell to them and set off on his own. Ling Han asked Huanxue to take out all the valuables from the bag and put them all into the green gourd. Young master, this is amazing. Huanxue's eyes widened in amazement. Even the pig revealed a strange expression and kept looking at Ling Han. There were pitifully few innate spatial artifacts, and they were not just simple containers. They also had many special abilities. Even in the previous civilization, very few people had the opportunity to obtain such a treasure. It was no exaggeration to say that if this gourd appeared in the previous civilization, it would definitely attract some old monsters to fight for it. But now, the Emperor Capital Academy obviously had it, but did not find a single one, allowing Ling Han to take advantage of it. Hiss, this brat's luck was too good. The little pink pig spread its limbs and hugged the green gourd tightly, looking like it was going to be Lord Pig from now on. Ling Han had a thought. Could he put this perverted pig inside? He used his thought to wrap it inside, but surprisingly discovered that this perverted pig's body had a kind of power that rebounded his divine sense. How many secrets did this pig hide? Ling Han decided to try other living creatures, but he obviously couldn't use coarse snow as an experiment. Thus, he walked slowly, and soon found a rabbit in the dense forest. He chased after it and caught it, but he didn't expect it to be formed by a formation. With a pang, it turned into light and shadow and disappeared, replaced by a red stone. Red cloud stone. Ling Han's expression was strange. He didn't look for it deliberately, and the red cloud stone just appeared in front of him. Did his luck attribute explode? Young master is really lucky, the little servant girl said, clapping her hands. The little pig tilted its head and looked at Ling Han. This was like a heavenly treasure taking the initiative to throw at Ling Han. Could this brat be the legendary person favored by the heavens? If that was really the case, then he had to properly curry favor with him. Ling Han continued forward. After a while, he finally encountered a wild wolf that hadn't evolved into a demonic beast. Ling Han grabbed it by the neck and lifted it up. It was like a little puppy, unable to resist. With a thought, shoo, the wild wolf disappeared. It was sucked into the green gourd. The wild wolf didn't die and went berserk in the space of the gourd. Suddenly entering a dark and sealed environment, it naturally couldn't control itself. Ling Han threw in some wild boar meat. He wanted to see if living creatures could survive in the space of the gourd. After doing this, he ignored it. After Ling Han and the servant girl left, they saw a figure suddenly rush over. This was a young man with his hands behind his back. He clearly wasn't old, but he had an intimidating aura. Hong Tianliang, it should be here. According to the information I obtained from the literature of the previous civilization, there should be a vitality-nourishing gourd vine here. Calculating the time, it should have produced a gourd long ago, he murmured. This gourd not only has a space of its own inside, but it can also nourish the body. It's too amazing for words. This is my great fortune. Once I obtain it, I finally have the hope of surpassing that person. When speaking of that person, his face revealed an incomparably complicated expression. There was envy, jealousy, worship, and hatred. Whoosh! He leaped into the large lake and began to search. After more than an hour, Hong Tianliang surfaced, his face full of malice. He found the green stone and the gourd vine, but he didn't find a gourd hanging on it. What was going on? Could it be that someone had beaten him to it and snatched away the fortune that belonged to him? If it was something else, he might have smiled and left confidently. But this time, he definitely couldn't. The vitality-nourishing gourd was related to whether or not he could surpass that person. This was a shadow that had been pressing down on him ever since he could remember, even though that person was also his closest brother. He went ashore, and very quickly discovered the remains of the giant snake on the other side of the lake. There were also 7 other people lying unconscious on the ground. Ji Choling was really ruthless. It had already been a night, but these 7 people still hadn't woken up. Humph! Hong Tianliang snorted lightly, emitting a terrifying aura. Instantly, the 7 people opened their eyes at the same time, filled with fear. Reading on the phone was more refreshing. Chapter 3258. A Good Romance. BQG 6. CC Second Young Master Hong. When they saw Hong Tianliang, the 7 of them hurriedly got up and bowed respectfully. Hong Tianliang was a prodigy of martial art to begin with, and his future achievements were limitless. Furthermore, his grandfather was the imperial tutor of the current dynasty, and had a high status and authority. Of course, what was most revered was that person's younger brother. Hong Tianliang nodded slowly and said, "You were knocked unconscious by someone. He's only 16 or 17 years old, but he's very, very strong." The 7 of them hastily replied, Being stared at by Hong Tianliang made them feel as if they were being stared at by an ancient beast, causing them to feel as if their guts were about to burst out. This kind of feeling was too depressing, and it would leave a psychological scar. "Oh, there's also a woman. She's a little older," someone added. Hong Tianliang took a deep breath and said, "Describe their appearance to me." "Yes, yes." After the 7 of them described Ji Qiuling and Huan Shui's appearance, Hong Tianliang turned on his photon computer and said, "Help me investigate 2 people." He described Ji Qiuling and Huan Shui's appearance and clothing. Logically speaking, optical computers were not allowed during the competition. This was also considered cheating, but who asked him to be Hong Tianliang? After a while, a reply came from the other side. Hong Tianliang projected 2 photos. "Is it them?" The 7 people were all astonished. They found the person so quickly. This method was too heaven-defying. "Yes, that's them. Ji Qiuling." Hong Tianliang looked through Ji Qiuling's information. He completely ignored Summon Snow. This was just an 11 meridian minor character. There was no way he could have killed this huge snake. Although the important parts have been cut off, from the remnant aura, I can still determine that this is a blood transformation demonic beast. Even if Ji Qiuling had opened all his hidden meridians, his strength would at most be 400,000 pounds. Therefore, this should be a first blood transformation demonic beast. Ordinary meridian opening experts naturally can't provoke a blood transformation demonic beast. So that Yuan Fuyuan gourd was definitely taken by him. I have to find him before he figures out the purpose of the gourd and retrieve the treasure. Otherwise, if the news leaks, it will bring me great trouble. He then contacted the people outside to locate Ji Qiuling's location. Everyone thinks that I suppressed my cultivation for the sake of obtaining the red cloudstone, so I didn't make a breakthrough and insisted on participating in this selection. But they don't know that although I want the red cloudstone, the spirit-nourishing gourd is what I really care about. No one can take away what I, Hong Tianliang, have set my eyes on. He showed a hint of ruthlessness. At this time, the optical supercomputer also reported back. Hong Tianliang immediately leaped up and rushed in Ji Qiuling's direction. Summon Snow was naturally ignored by him again. Ling Han and Huan Shui walked aimlessly. Since they were looking for the red cloudstone, it didn't matter where they went. Perhaps they would run into some heavenly treasure if their luck was off the charts. Needless to say, Ling Han definitely carried a strong halo of hatred. No matter where he went, he would get into trouble, whether he was willing or not, whether he took the initiative or not. But now, the halo of hatred must have been deeply hidden, replaced by the attribute of his luck. That was because in less than half a day's time, all kinds of demonic beasts had lunged at them, and were easily killed by Ling Han with one punch. Later it was proven that this was all derived from the formation, and contributed to him quite a few red cloudstones. This was definitely an explosion of luck. Xiao, another mountain leopard, lunged over, but its strength was only at 10 meridians, just enough to release its force. With a wave of its right front paw, a wave of force swept over. Summon Snow met it with a battle cry. Peng, peng, peng. After dozens of moves, the mountain leopard was killed, turning into broken shadows. Another red cloud stone descended from the sky. "Young master, for you." She picked up the red cloud stone and handed it to Ling Han. If others saw this, they would definitely weep bitterly, because too many people didn't have the slightest gain after entering, unlike Ling Han and the others, who had red cloudstones delivered themselves. Ling Han shook his head. "Take this one yourself. Take a few more after this. I estimate that 5 or 6 will be enough for you to enter the top 100. Young master, can Summon Snow also enter the academy?" Summon Snow asked in surprise. Ling Han smiled. "If you don't enter the academy, I'll have to spend money to find a place for you to stay." Of course, this was a joke. "Thank you, young master, thank you, young master." Summon Snow nodded incessantly. Wait. Just as Summon Snow was about to put away the red cloud stone, a loud shout rang out, and a young man flew over. Summon Snow started. "I'm putting away the thing young master gave me. What are you shouting for?" "Hand over the red cloud stone," the young man said coldly. He looked to be about 24 or 25 years old, and had a confident expression. Summon Snow subconsciously tightened her grip on the red cloud stone and repeatedly shook her head. This belongs to young master, I can't give it to you. The young man looked at Ling Han and couldn't help but sneer. What dog's hit young master is this? You dare act all high and mighty in front of me? Who are you? Summon Snow was furious. She couldn't tolerate anyone being disrespectful to her young master. I'm Han San. The young man gave himself a thumbs up. Han San. The little maid was at a loss. Of course she hadn't heard of this name before. Han San was both angry and anxious. You've actually never heard of my name? Go ask around in the Fulin district. Who doesn't know of my fame? You sound like a hoodlum, Ling Han said to Summon Snow. Oh. Summon Snow nodded. Who's a hoodlum? Who's a hoodlum? Han San jumped up. He was the trump card of the Iron Bull Dojo. He had only been in the dojo for 5 years, but he had already become the eldest senior brother. If he entered the Imperial Academy this time, he would be even more awesome. You're the master, right? You dare look down on me? Han San charged at Ling Han. Those who had come to participate in the selection, apart from the pretentious Hong Tianliang, meant that everyone else was at the bottom of the hierarchy. Therefore, there was nothing to be afraid of. Boom, he struck out with his palm. An ordinary 12 meridian would at most have 120,000 jin of strength. Of course, this was actually not bad among 12 meridians. This was more like it. If he met someone who had opened all his hidden meridians, wouldn't it be too chaotic? Ling Han extended a finger and pressed it towards the other. Peng, Han San was instantly sent flying, and directly knocked unconscious. Search him and see if he has any red cloud stones on him, Ling Han said. Yes, young master. Summon Snow hurriedly searched his body. Very quickly, her eyes lit up. Young master, there is. A red cloud stone appeared in her hand. Ling Han nodded and said, okay, put it away. Summon Snow carefully put away the red cloud stone. She knew that her young master really needed this kind of thing. Therefore, she was only keeping it for her young master. Once she obtained the right to enter the Imperial Academy, she would return the red cloud stone to Ling Han. The more people who give away money, the better, Ling Han murmured. However, this caused Han San, who had just woken up, to immediately faint from anger again. Reading on the phone is more refreshing. Chapter 3260. A Good Romance. BQG 6. Ling Han discovered that the power of heaven and earth in the Green Gourd was decreasing rapidly. It wasn't inexhaustible. A night passed, and the two exited the gourd. Because they were under a tree, they almost tripped and fell. Let's find a more flat place next time. Ling Han hung the green gourd on his waist and continued to wander the mountains with Huan Shui. His good luck attribute continued to work. It seemed like the formations here would go crazy when they encountered him and create beasts to attack him. In the end, they only produced pieces of red cloud rocks. Ling Han could clearly feel that his body was rapidly strengthening. Previously, because he didn't have a spatial artifact, he didn't bring the ingredients for the medicinal bath. After obtaining the green gourd, he regretted it. He shouldn't have been afraid of trouble and brought everything in. Now that he had more and more red cloud rocks, he didn't dwell on this anymore. He believed that after he digested all these red cloud rocks, his body would be able to reach the limits of the illuminating pulse realm. After walking for a day, they didn't encounter a single real beast, so there was nothing to eat. Huan Shui volunteered to continue hunting. Ling Han thought about it and nodded in agreement. This little servant girl should gradually develop her own independence. He couldn't always rely on her. He started a campfire. With the spatial artifact, he could bring all kinds of spices and wouldn't have to worry about food being tasteless. Not long after, he saw a person flying over from afar. He was very fast. When he first saw him, he was just a black dot, but in the blink of an eye, he was already in front of him. It was a tall and slender young man. He was quite handsome. It was Hong Tianliang. Hong Tianliang was very anxious now. He searched for an entire day but couldn't find Huan Shui or that young man. He had no choice but to use his photon computer to contact the outside world and ask someone to help him locate them again. Although the other party did it for him, it meant that this was the last time. When the message came, Hong Tianliang was stunned. The other party was actually behind him. He quickly ran back, feeling very anxious. It had already been more than a day. Could that person have figured out how to use the essence nurturing gourd and even found out that it had more powerful uses outside of the spatial artifact? Xiao, Hong Tianliang hurriedly stopped. He glanced at Ling Han, then used his holobrain to project a picture. Have you seen this woman before? Hey, isn't this Cool Snow? Ling Han was astonished. Why was the other party looking for Huanxue? Could it be that he had taken a look at her in the crowd and liked her? That was impossible. It wasn't that Ling Han was looking down on Huanxue, but she was the second grandson of Grand Tutor Hong. Her talent in martial art was also quite monstrous. Ling Han felt that with his current status and identity, his maidservant wasn't worthy of Hong Tianliang's attention. Furthermore, Calling Snow wasn't an exquisite beauty like the Empress, who was so beautiful that she could make one's head spin. Then why did the other party look for Huanxue? I'm asking you a question. What are you staring at? Hong Tianliang said with dissatisfaction. Although he had participated in this test, the truth was that he did not take any of the prospective students seriously. In his eyes, these people were not worthy of being his opponents, and were not worthy of being his classmates in the future. His goal was only the origin nurturing gourd, and he could take some red cloud stones along the way. Taking a step back, red cloud stones were priceless to the general public, but as the grandson of Grand Tutor Hong, it was the same. After all, these red cloud stones weren't very pure, and could not compare to the ones that the Vaja general had obtained. Ling Han sighed. He really didn't want to take the initiative to cause trouble, but who asked the other party to be so arrogant? He couldn't tolerate this. Hehe, this is the attitude you use when asking questions, he said indifferently. Hong Tianliang couldn't help but be stunned. Was this brat insulting him? There was actually someone who dared to oppose him? Fresh. In reality, he wasn't an unreasonable person. As the grandson of Grand Tutor Hong, his upbringing was definitely top-notch. It was just that he stood too high, and he was always flattered by others, so it was inevitable that he had developed some bad habits. His expression became serious, and he said, "Sorry, I was too impatient." Ling Han was a bit surprised that the other party would actually apologize. It seemed that he could still be saved. He nodded and said, "The apology is accepted. You can leave now." Oh. Hong Tianliang nodded and strode forward, but after a few steps, he suddenly realized something. That wasn't right. Wasn't he asking the other party a question? Why was he leaving after apologizing? Realizing that something was wrong, Hong Tianliang suddenly turned around. His gaze swept past, and he saw the green gourd that was tied to Ling Han's waist. Although he hadn't seen the real vitality-nourishing gourd, he was focused on looking for it, so he instinctively thought in that direction. "You're Cool Snow's companion," he said loudly. He couldn't be sure that this was a lie to Ling Han. Ling Han could have denied it, but what was he afraid of? Wrong, not companion. "She's my servant," he said indifferently. "So you're the one who killed the lake demon snake?" Hong Tianliang pointed at Ling Han. Ling Han frowned slightly. Why did the other party mention this? Was this snake raised by his family? "What does it have to do with you?" Ling Han asked. Hong Tianliang revealed a smile. Of course, he was now sure that the gourd tied to Ling Han's waist was the vitality-nourishing gourd that he had been searching for. Very good, he finally found it. "Hand over the gourd," he said indifferently. Ling Han had thought that the other party was strange. He was actually looking for Cool Snow. Now that the other party said this, he could connect the dots. The other party's goal was the green gourd, but he couldn't find it in the lake, so he asked the 7 people lying by the lake. Because the 7 people had only seen Cool Snow and Ji Qiuling, the person Hong Tianliang was looking for became Cool Snow. He smiled and said, "Why?" "Because if you don't give it to me, I'll beat you until you give it to me willingly," Hong Tianliang said confidently. When it came to martial arts strength, other than his brother who was so monstrous that he shouldn't exist in the world, He didn't think that anyone in the same cultivation level could compare to him. Ling Han laughed loudly. Shouldn't this kind of threat come from him? All right, let's fight. He hooked his finger. Hong Tianliang didn't attack immediately. He just pretended to be pretentious and said, "Why bother? Give me the gourd now, and I can still be friends with you. Otherwise, you'll lose this favor and get beaten up. Has anyone told you that you'll get struck by lightning if you act pretentious?" Ling Han reminded him kindly. "Those are just weaklings with no strength," Hong Tianliang said indifferently. He was still acting pretentious. Ling Han smiled and said, "Why don't we make a bet? If I lose, this gourd will belong to you." Hong Tianliang put his hands behind his back and said, "I won't lose. You really don't know how to chat. You seem to have the same effect as that idiot." Ling Han sighed. BK phone reading is more refreshing. Chapter 3261. A Beautiful Romance. BQG 6. "Cece, take this," Hong Tianliang shouted, and had already begun his attack. Boom, his figure charged out, his speed extraordinarily fast, bringing with it a powerful sonic boom. He was indeed very powerful. Not mentioning anything else, just the wind brought about by this speed was enough to blow away an ordinary 12 meridians practitioner. However, against Ling Han, this was naturally far from enough. Ling Han's upper body did not move, but his legs moved swiftly backwards. Xiao, 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 his speed was also very terrifying. They had clearly not exchanged blows, but because Ling Han's speed was too fast, a shock wave formed behind him, hitting Hong Tianliang's body, instantly affecting him, and his figure involuntarily tilted. Hong Tianliang had no choice but to change his path, otherwise, with his current speed, he would be completely unable to maintain the correct path if he continued to withstand Ling Han's shockwave. He was surprised that Ling Han's speed could also reach such a level, and was not inferior to his own. Although this was far from reaching his highest speed, it had long since surpassed the speed that a 12 meridians practitioner should be able to achieve. This young man, who was even younger than him by a few years, really gave him a shock. "Take this," Hong Tianliang humphed, and struck out with a palm, pressing towards Ling Han. His power was released, and the force of his palm compressed the air, stacking layer upon layer, transforming into a large hand visible to the naked eye. Ling Han clenched his fist, and punched out. Bam! The forces of both sides collided, but it was Ling Han's fist that shattered. He had underestimated the other. Ling Han had only used 150,000 jin of strength in this punch, and had not expected that he would not be able to defeat the other. Hong Tianliang, however, felt that this was only natural. He was a being with 20 meridians, and could step into the blood transformation realm at any time. His strength could reach 150,000 jin, and was a whole 5 times stronger than an ordinary illuminating pulse peak. "Your strength has actually reached 150,000 jin," he stopped, and said with a trace of admiration, "You should have opened all your hidden meridians, right?" From his point of view, an ordinary 20 meridians would only have a strength of 300,000 pounds. Unless it was a monster like him, who had opened up his meridians wider, allowing his secret power to flow faster, and cultivated a high-grade cultivation technique, allowing his secret power to become incomparably pure. Only then would he be able to achieve a terrifying strength of 500,000 pounds. But compared to that man, Hong Tianliang's heart twitched slightly. That person's peak physical strength had reached a terrifying 1 million kilograms. That was not inferior to ordinary experts at the 5 blood transformation realm. He was unable to imagine just how he had managed to cultivate such power. "I'll give you a chance. Submit to me, and I'll bring you onto a broader stage," he said. Ling Han rubbed his chin and smiled. "You can't give me the stage I want." TSK, what arrogance." Hong Tianliang stared blankly for a moment before snorting coldly. "That's not confidence, but arrogance. Come. Let's see how strong you are." Ling Han was very interested. "You'll find out," Hong Tianliang roared, once again launching an attack. This time, he increased the power of his attack by a bit. He hadn't dared to attack too fiercely before because he was afraid Ling Han was too weak. What if he killed Ling Han with a single palm? Although his grandfather was the grand tutor of the current dynasty, that didn't mean he could cover the sky with one hand. He definitely wouldn't have to pay with his life, but he would still be imprisoned for a few years. Ling Han also increased his power a bit, clashing head-on with his opponent. Bang! After this exchange, Hong Tianliang was once more shocked. How had he been blocked by Ling Han? He had clearly already increased his power to around 400,000 pounds. According to reason, Ling Han shouldn't have been able to block it. So you were still holding back, he hatefully said. This bastard actually dared to look down on him. Filled with hatred, he couldn't help attacking with his full power. 200,000 pounds of power exploded out. It was extremely terrifying. Ling Han suppressed his cultivation level, and similarly exploded with a power of 250,000 kilograms, exchanging another blow with his opponent. Bang! Under the shock of the enormous power, Hong Tianliang's expression changed, and he looked at Ling Han in disbelief. He had used his full power, but the other had actually fought to a draw. Had you been playing with me all this time? I have to admit, I really did underestimate you, he said solemnly. Ling Han only smiled slightly. However, in the end, you only came from a remote corner. Hong Tianliang's arms shook, emitting cracking sounds. 20 meridians can cultivate to a strength of 500,000 jin. There is no need to doubt your talent. However, your birth has determined your limitations. Again, his legs kicked out, exploding with astonishing speed. Peng! He almost reached the speed of sound as he punched towards Ling Han. Hey! Ling Han was shocked. The power of this punch definitely surpassed 500,000 pounds. Oh, he understood now. Hong Tianliang had indeed used his full power just now, but that was only a secret power. He had also trained in body arts. Now that the two kinds of power had burst out together, his power had once again been pushed to a new height. 600,000 pounds. Ling Han nodded inwardly. This was already comparable to when he had been at 20 meridians. Unfortunately, he didn't have 20 meridians now. He still returned a punch, incomparably calm. Peng! Hong Tianliang's punch was once again dispelled by Ling Han. Hong Tianliang was really dumbfounded this time. Although 600,000 pounds of power was still not his limit, the problem was, on what basis did Ling Han also have 600,000 pounds of power? And he even suspected that this might not be Ling Han's limit either. To think that you can also train your body, he gritted his teeth. Cultivation was a very easy matter. Even if one could not obtain the inheritance of a cultivation method, they could still step onto the path of cultivation by relying on fist techniques, leg techniques, and so on. And it didn't matter if one was poor. The heavens and earth were the most selfless, and everyone could use its power. However, body cultivators were different. This was very costly, very costly. Even a blood transformation realm family would not be able to afford it. Furthermore, there were different levels of body arts. For a pinnacle realm family, it could only be said to be for fun. His maximum strength was 800,000 pounds. If he used it alone, his secret power would be 200,000 pounds, and his physical strength would be 400,000 pounds. But if he used them together, the effect would not be 1 + 1, but would be slightly inferior. After all, it was impossible to reach a perfect state when two different kinds of power were merged together. Apart from that monster of a brother of his. Now, Ling Han actually also had 600,000 pounds of power. This shocked him. A kid from a backwater village was too monstrous. I really don't believe it. Hong Tianliang exploded out once more. This time, he did not hold back. 800,000 pounds of power poured out in full force. Boom! This punch had the power to topple mountains and overturn seas. The power of body arts could not be underestimated. Ling Han was suddenly very curious. Now that he had also started body arts, his maximum strength had definitely broken through £1,000,000. How much was it exactly? As he thought of this, he also instinctively punched out. He could not control it, and it directly soared to £1,000,000 of power. BAM mobile reading is more refreshing. Chapter 3262. A Good Romance. BQG 6. Cicitio, Hong Tianliang was sent flying. Even though their fists did not directly collide, Ling Han's strength was too great. The remaining force was still enough to strike Hong Tianliang's body and easily send him flying. Peng! Hong Tianliang fell heavily onto the ground. However, even a force of around 200,000 jin wasn't enough to cause much harm to him. After all, his body refinement art had reached the small success realm. This little bit of damage wasn't a drizzle, but it wasn't very severe. He immediately got up, but his eyes were filled with shock as he looked at Ling Han. "A million jin of strength," he said in shock. "You actually cultivated a million jin of strength." Ling Han came back to his senses. It turned out that he had accidentally used too much strength. He smiled. "Are you hurt?" This kind of concern was simply a great humiliation. Hong Tianliang's chest heaved violently. Among those of the same level, other than his brother, who was so monstrous that he shouldn't exist in the world, he never thought that anyone could defeat him. But now, there was such a young man standing in front of him. A force of 1,000,000 jin. The meridian opening realm had two extremes. The first was 1,000,000 pounds of force. He hadn't reached that yet, but he was confident that as long as he obtained the Yuan nourishing gourd and nourished it for a year, he would definitely be able to reach that limit. As far as he knew, there were quite a few people in the capital who had reached this limit. For example, there were some monstrously talented princes and a few descendants of the four great commanders. However, the majority of them had already reached the blood transformation realm or even higher. The second limit was the strength of 1,000,000 jin. This was too terrifying, because an ordinary fifth blood transformation only had this much power. It was impossible to reach such a height just by relying on arcane power. It was said that the limit of arcane power was 1,000,000 kilograms of force. One must also undergo body cultivation to obtain 1,000,000 kilograms of force. Moreover, one must perfectly fuse the two together. Only then would one be able to reach the second limit of 1,000,000 kilograms. This was something that almost no one could achieve. Except for one person. His unearthly brother Ling Han shouldn't be able to reach 1,000,000 kilograms of force, but breaking that boundary was already extremely shocking. He could even be called the number one person in the meridian opening realm. To think that I would meet a genius here. Hong Tianliang calmed down. "Just SOSO. Ling Han was very humble. "You're just SOSO. How can you call yourself a genius?" Hong Tianliang had already controlled his emotions. He stared at Ling Han and said, "If this was another situation, you might still be able to befriend me. But for the sake of this essence-nurturing gourd, I must fight for it." Energy-cultivating gourd. Ling Han nodded. That was the name of the green gourd. He smiled faintly and said, "What makes you think you can defeat me? Battle strength doesn't just depend on strength. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a need for everyone to fight. Wouldn't it just be a competition of strength?" said Hong Tianliang. This was indeed reasonable. Power was only one aspect of battle prowess. Of course, it was also a very important aspect. It could even be said to be the most important aspect. Furthermore, my strength might not necessarily lose to yours, Hong Tianliang added. Ling Han was surprised. "You haven't done your best." Hong Tianliang's face was filled with arrogance. He didn't reply to Ling Han's question. Instead, a red light surged on his body, and his veins bulged, instantly destroying his handsome appearance. Ling Han gave an "oh" and said, "So you've activated your cultivation technique to unleash an outburst." Just like when he activated the Monkey King's cultivation technique, his strength would welcome a small outburst in a short period of time. His strength could even overlap to the 20th level. Of course, the time was very short. Hong Tianliang should be the same. "That's right." Hong Tianliang humphed. "I cultivate the Tiger King technique. It focuses on killing and can destroy everything." That was quite a nice way of putting it. "Come, let me experience it," Ling Han said with a smile. "You will," Hong Tianliang said. Then, he suddenly pounced forward. Peng, his feet stomped on the ground. Under the outburst of strength, his speed instantly broke through the speed of sound. From Ling Han's perspective, it was very strange. Because Hong Tianliang's outburst was terrifying, But there was only silence on his side. He couldn't hear anything. The two of them were only separated by 3 or 4 feet. How long would it take to travel at the speed of sound? In just the blink of an eye, Hong Tianliang had already arrived. He struck out with his palm, drawing out a strange path. Somewhat interesting. Ling Han smiled lightly. He didn't use the demon monkey fist. It was just an ordinary punch, but it increased his strength by a lot. In addition to his physical strength, it should be at least 1.5 million jin. Peng 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 peng. Hong Tianliang clearly only struck out with his palm, but it formed more than 10 attacks. However, even so, he only barely dissipated the power of Ling Han's one punch. What? Hong Tianliang's mouth opened wide. Under the activation of his cultivation technique, the strength just now had already rushed to the first limit of 1 million jin. In addition to the stacking of the 14 layers of strength, even a third blood transfusion cultivator could be smashed to death by him. However, Ling Han only used one punch to dissipate it. Simple, ordinary, without the slightest bit of deliberate. Heavens, how strong was this guy's strength? 1.5 million jin. 1.5 million jin. This is your limit. Hong Tianliang panted. Ling Han thought about it. Although he hadn't activated the Monkey King's cultivation technique, he had indeed activated his original strength to the limit. As a result, he nodded. Not bad. Hong Tianliang was speechless. He had the confidence to charge to the first limit, but that was all. It was impossible for him to reach 1.5 million jin. I've lost, he said dejectedly. Although he had just said that being stronger did not mean that one's battle prowess was stronger, when one's strength reached a certain level, it would be a crushing advantage. For example, that attack just now. Ling Han didn't even need to use any techniques. Just a casual strike was enough to dissipate his explosive power. What else could he do? In terms of strength, there are only 3 or 4 people in the Meridian Opening Realm who can stand shoulder to shoulder with you, he said. It wasn't that he wasn't strong, but that Ling Han's strength was too exaggerated. However, compared to that person, you are far inferior, Hong Tianliang added. This was a shadow in his heart, but it was also his pride. Oh! Ling Han's interest was piqued. That person reached 1 million jin of strength before stepping into the blood transformation realm, Hong Tianliang said word by word. His expression was extremely strange. There was admiration, jealousy, and disappointment. Even the Saint Emperor evaluated him as a heavenly genius when he found out. Ling Han smiled and asked, "Is that person your brother?" Hong Tianliang nodded and didn't say anything. Interesting. He was clearly his brother, but he even avoided mentioning his name. Ling Han could understand how much pressure he felt to have such a monstrous brother. That was because no matter how good or outstanding you were, you would pale in comparison to that person. What's your brother's name? Phone reading is more refreshing. Chapter 3264. BQG6, CC BQG6. CC Hong Tianliang's martial prowess was definitely one of the best in the Meridian Opening Realm. No one doubted that. But now, he was actually being used as a cushion by someone else. How shocking was that? It could be said that defeating Hong Tianliang was already inconceivable. But he still dared to use Grand Tutor Hong's grandson, that person's brother, as a cushion. That was even more shocking. This was a peerless, ferocious person. But they actually wanted to rob such a peerless, ferocious person? Hiss, they must be tired of living. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "All right, come and try robbing me. All right, let's fight." Quite a few of them still hadn't recognized Hong Tianliang. After all, who would believe that he would be used as a cushion? They were all eager to try. Bastards. That big brother immediately flipped out, kicking and stomping on his subordinates. Only then did he turn to Ling Han. "Master, it's my subordinates who don't know any better. Please don't take it to heart." Why did Big Brother change from arrogance to deference? Understood. It had to be Big Brother's scheme. He was first careless and then waiting for a chance to strike. Damn, as expected of their Big Brother. All the lackeys thought this way in their hearts, and their admiration for their boss immediately rose like a torrential river, unending and unending. Linghan looked at this boss and said indifferently, "Then you mean you won't rob me?" "No, no, no, how would I dare?" That boss hurriedly shook his head, cold sweat pouring down his face. TCH, boss's acting skills were amazing. All the subordinates thought this, feeling even more reverence for their boss. Linghan shook his head. "How can that be? We have to keep our word. We said we were going to rob, so we can't give up halfway." "Master, I was wrong." That boss knelt down. He really couldn't provoke someone who dared to use Hong Tianliang as a cushion. Even if they couldn't kill people here, it wasn't like they were going to stay here forever. Boss's sacrifice was a bit too great. Did he have to do this to confuse his opponent? They looked at each other, seeing the difficulty in each other's eyes. If it was them, they definitely wouldn't make such a sacrifice. "Boss, you're so great." They were all prepared to attack and were just waiting for their boss to suddenly attack. Linghan laughed. "Are you really not going to rob me anymore?" The boss shook his head like a rattledrum. "I don't dare." "Absolutely not." Linghan nodded. "Since you're not going to rob me, then let's go. You're not going to extort money from me, are you? Let's go. Let's go." The boss let out a sigh of relief. It would be great if they could escape unscathed like this. He crawled to his feet, waved his hand, and said, "Hurry up and scram." All the lackeys were at a loss. Didn't they say that they would first confuse the opponent before attacking? The delusion was successful, but why didn't he do it? "What are you still standing around for? Hurry up and scram," shouted the boss. Were they trying to make trouble for him? It had been so difficult for this peerless expert to let them leave. Although the subordinates didn't understand, they had to listen to their boss, so they left with him. Linghan could not help smiling. He did not expect that Hong Tianliang still had some use. If Hong Tianliang were to learn of this, he would probably vomit blood. Was the value of his life just to intimidate a few hooligans? The night passed, and the next day, Linghan and Huanxue continued on their way. The unlucky Hong Tianliang was still lying there. With his physique, he wouldn't catch a cold even if he stayed in the cold for a night. Linghan studied the gourd again and found that the mysterious energy had returned, and it had reached a rather dense level. He understood that as long as there were no living things, the gourd would produce nourishing energy. But as soon as there were living things, the energy would begin to nourish them until it was exhausted. No wonder it was called the Qi-nurturing gourd. Unfortunately, Linghan was not Hong Tianliang. His photon computer could not connect to the internet, so he could not find any more information about the gourd. The two of them continued to wander. This region was very large, and it was inevitable that they would be robbed. In the end, they were the ones who robbed others, and Linghan was able to obtain more and more red cloud gems. The third day, the fourth day, the fifth day. Time passed quickly, and as it gradually approached the end of the selection, the participants became more and more frenzied, and there were more and more cases of attacks between each other. Linghan naturally did not care. He was now absolutely invincible in the illuminating pulse realm. Even if Hong Tianliang and Ji Qiuling, who had opened 20 meridians, worked together, he would not be afraid. Even 10 of them would not be enough. He was studying the gourd, and he would enter it to cultivate every day. He found that although the energy within could be used for cultivation, it was actually more beneficial to the improvement of spiritual power. Qi nurturing Qi was to nurture the primordial spirit. Linghan could not help but be pleasantly surprised. Up until now, there were many methods to improve secret power and temper the physique. There was no lack of pills and natural treasures. The only difference was that they were a little more expensive. However, were there any cultivation techniques to improve spiritual power? Treasure fruits were even more priceless. He had only been able to obtain a mystical cloud fruit after obtaining first place in the Hidden Tiger City competition. The gourd could strengthen spiritual power. It was definitely a supreme treasure. Hong Tianliang probably did not know much about it. He only thought that the gourd could nourish the body and raise the level of life. He had no idea that it was targeted at the consciousness. There was no need to tell him. Linghan was very satisfied. Currently, spiritual power could only be used in alchemy and formation Dao, but he had a feeling that martial art had just begun to sprout. In the future, there would definitely be more widespread uses for it. On the 7th day, the 8th day, and on the 9th day, the people became even more frenzied, completely losing their reason. Originally, the weak did not dare to attack the strong, but now such things were happening all the time. Some used ambushes, some weak teamed up. In short, there were battles everywhere. Ling Han and Huan Xue came to the foot of a mountain. There was a sign erected here, which said, "Danger ahead, no entry. Young master, let's turn back." Huan Xue was very timid. This was determined by her birth, and her horizons had not been broadened. Ling Han, however, was very interested. He said, "It's fine. The rules of the selection didn't say that we can't go anywhere, so there's no harm in going in and taking a look." "But young master, it's very dangerous inside," Huan Xue said in a low voice. She was worried about safety, but she did not dare to disobey her young master. "If there is danger, we can still hide in the gourd. There's no need to be afraid." Since Ling Han was interested, how could he be dissuaded by a few words? "Oh." Huan Xue could only nod. She had never had her own opinions. The two of them stepped over the sign and walked up the mountain. They did not see anything strange along the way, which made Huan Xue gradually feel relieved. That could be someone's prank. However, Ling Han revealed a solemn expression. Reading on the phone was more refreshing. Chapter 3265. A Good Romance. BQG 6. Ling Han sensed a very obscure aura that was extremely powerful. It should be the ultimate bone realm, he thought. "Wait here first," he said in a low voice. The best thing about Snowcaller was that she wouldn't ask too many questions and only nodded obediently. Ling Han extended his body and walked up the mountain. His footsteps were light and almost didn't make a single sound. After a short while, he arrived at the top of the mountain. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A loud snoring sound traveled over like thunder. Ling Han slowed down his steps. He knew that the ultimate bone realm was too powerful. Even though it was sleeping so soundly now, it would immediately wake up at the slightest movement. He looked over and couldn't help but be surprised because the existence that was snoring was actually a dog. The fat dog's entire body was almost perfectly round. Its fur was so black that it glowed as if it had been smeared with oil. This dog's body was very big, but it wasn't at the level of a giant. It was about the size of a water buffalo. Now, it was snoring loudly. A tongue was sticking out, and as it breathed, there was actually a bubble above its nostrils that continuously expanded and shrunk. One couldn't help but be curious when this bubble would explode. Such a fat dog, could it be at least in the ultimate bone realm? If this was a female dog, could he let the big black dog tempt it? This thought flashed through Ling Han's mind. However, he immediately laughed in spite of himself. Even if the large black dog could be released, and even if it really was a female dog, with the large black dog's despicable nature, which female dog would be interested in it? Forget it. He scanned again. Millimeter. He found a tree beside this fat dog. This tree was very short, only half a person's height, but it grew very well. The crown of the tree was shaped like a hemisphere. The most important thing was that the leaves on it were actually all different. Some were like swords, some like knives, some like spears. There were all kinds of them. When the wind blew, these leaves even made a clanking sound, as if there were really weapons colliding with each other. Instinctively, Ling Han thought that this was a treasure tree. That was why there was a powerful demon dog guarding it. The warning sign at the bottom clearly indicated that the Emperor Capital Academy knew of the existence of this fat dog. Of course, they wouldn't have missed this strange treasure tree. Perhaps, this demon dog was raised by the Academy. Although the relationship between demonic beasts and humans was not very good, it was still possible for human experts to tame demonic beasts as battle pets to guard their homes. The problem was, the watchdog was just lying there. How could he get close? Ling Han did not think that he would be able to get close to a paramount bone demon dog without being discovered, even if it was sleeping soundly. "I got it." He retreated and explained the plan to the little maid. Young master, isn't this too dangerous? Summon Snow's face was pale. That was a paramount bone realm demonic beast. It could easily bite her young master to death. Don't worry. Ling Han comforted her. The little pink pig grinned coldly. It actually hoped that Ling Han would be eaten by a demonic beast. Before it could gloat for long, it felt a weight on its neck and was lifted up by Ling Han. You're coming with me. Gu. The perverted pig squealed. Naturally, it was unwilling. How could Ling Han pay any attention to it? He first hid the origin nurturing bottle gourd in a secluded place, and then carried out the test. When he ran close to it, he used his mind to communicate with it. Xiao, his body immediately disappeared from where it was. If anyone were to see this, they would definitely scream out loud. In reality, Ling Han had entered the inner space of the essence nurturing gourd. Perverted pig, cooperate. Otherwise, I'll throw you outside to be eaten by a dog, Ling Han said to Perverted Pig as he came out of the gourd. It didn't enter the gourd with him. Perverted Pig nodded unwillingly. It wasn't that it was afraid of being eaten by a demonic beast, but if it was taken away by a demonic beast, where could it find a pretty sister? Done. Ling Han nodded. He brought Perverted Pig just in case. This could intimidate demonic beasts, although he didn't know if it would have any effect on paramount bone realm beasts. After arranging Summon Snow, Ling Han prepared to act. His plan was very simple. He would use himself as bait to attract the demonic dog to chase him. Summon Snow would take the opportunity to pluck the leaves. As for Ling Han, he ran near the essence nurturing gourd and directly entered it. If the fat dog caught up to him in advance, he would use Perverted Pig to threaten it. Hopefully, this fat pig would be able to show its might. Xiao, he threw out a stone. It heavily smashed into the ground, causing a loud sound. That fat dog didn't even move. If not for the bubbles still coming out of its nose, people would really suspect that it was dead. It's fine if a pig is this lazy. After all, it's a pig. But how can a dog be this lazy? Ling Han muttered. Perverted Pig was indignant and bared its fangs at him. You're not allowed to look down on pigs like this. Again. Ling Han threw another stone. This time, he directly aimed at the demonic dog. The stone smashed over, but when it touched the demonic dog's body, it suddenly exploded into pieces. So powerful. Ling Han was shocked. The blood chi of the blood transformation realm soared to the heavens. This ultimate bone realm was even more awesome. The aura that seeped out of their bodies was so terrifying that even rocks could be shattered. No wonder this demonic dog was sleeping so soundly. Then could he walk over and pluck the leaves? Ling Han considered this tempting thought. His feet involuntarily moved, and he quietly approached that fat dog. Very good, this fellow didn't react at all. Summon Snow watched from afar in astonishment. This wasn't going according to their plan. Ling Han was already less than 10 feet away from the fat dog, but the dog was still snoring loudly. Very good. Keep it up, good dog. Ling Han walked to the side of the tree and carefully examined it. In just an instant, he could determine that there were a total of 999 leaves on this tree. And each leaf was in the shape of a weapon. They were all swords, but there were also short swords, long swords, curved swords, hooked swords, and so on. Ling Han had a strange feeling. Why did these leaves really seem to be able to grow into weapons? What a curious tree. He was just about to pluck a leaf to study when he suddenly discovered that something was wrong. Where was the snoring sound? He abruptly turned around, but he was shocked, because the fat dog had actually stood up at some point and was staring at him. When it saw him turn around, it opened its mouth and spat out a long tongue, saliva flowing out of it. F***ck, so embarrassing. Ling Han chuckled, and then suddenly made a move. Gu. The pig let out a miserable cry, because it had been forcefully stuffed into the big dog's mouth by Ling Han. Then, Ling Han broke into a run. Using the flying shuttle steps, he instantly exploded with terrifying speed. Peng, a sonic boom exploded, forming a terrifying shock wave that caused the dog's fur to dance wildly. That fat dog was startled. This kind of change had also greatly exceeded its expectations. But it also immediately turned around and ran in pursuit of Ling Han. Gu. The pig let out a miserable cry. It was still in the dog's mouth. Bastard. Phone reading is more refreshing. Chapter 3266. A Good Romance. BQG 6. CC. After running a few steps, the fat dog also realized that it was somewhat uncomfortable to stuff a pig in its mouth. Although the suckling pig wasn't big, its body wasn't that big either. After stuffing a small suckling pig into its mouth, its upper jaw was stuck up high, almost blocking its eyes. It bit down hard, wanting to bite the small pig into pieces and use it as a snack. However, when it bit down hard, it found that the pig was surprisingly flexible. Although its teeth bit down, they didn't penetrate the pig's body. Instead, they immediately bounced back. What was going on? The fat dog was a little confused. It was a ultimate bone realm existence, but it couldn't bite a small suckling pig to pieces. It bit again, but it was still useless. After a few bites, it had to admit that it really couldn't bite through this guy in its mouth. How could it chase like this? It hurriedly coughed and spat out the small suckling pig. The little lascivious pig immediately began to whine, its fury overflowing. On one hand, it scolded Ling Han for not being loyal, and on the other hand, it scolded this stupid dog for being blind, even daring to bite it. Just wait, after it left, it would eat dog meat every day until it vomited. The big fat dog stared at the pig. It was actually full of interest in this pig, but after thinking about it, it was better to capture the guy who wanted to steal the leaves first. After all, this was the Academy's territory, and this guy actually dared to steal things. It had to capture him. When it thought of a certain person's leather whip, it couldn't help but tremble. It didn't want to be beaten. Chase. It spread its 4 legs and chased after Ling Han. Call Snow was dumbfounded. This seemed to be going according to plan. The big fat dog went to chase the young master, but she still felt that something was wrong. She hurriedly ran out, first to pick up a few leaves, then ran over to pick up the small suckling pig and ran away. This big fat dog would be back soon. They had to leave as soon as possible, or they would definitely be in big trouble. Ling Han ran. Although he started first, and the big dog was delayed for a moment, its speed was still very fast, even faster than when he used the shuttle steps. Looking back, he saw that it was rapidly approaching. This was almost twice the speed of sound. Seeing that half a minute was almost up, Ling Han realized that he was far from reaching his limit. Otherwise, he would have felt his whole body heating up, especially his legs, as if they were about to explode. This was the result of his body tempering. His physique had become stronger, and the limits of what he could endure had naturally risen as well. Even so, the big fat dog was getting closer and closer. It wouldn't be long before it caught up to him. F***ck, weren't you so lazy that you couldn't even wake up from being hit by a rock? How did you suddenly wake up? You're obviously so lazy, so why are you running so fast? Speaking of which, is all your fat for show? How can you still run so fast? Ling Han cursed in his heart. He was about to be caught, but he was only a short distance away from the essence-nourishing gourd. He activated the Monkey King's technique, and his speed suddenly increased. Peng, he reached about 1.5 times the speed of sound, and the big fat dog's approaching speed immediately slowed down. The big fat dog let out a snort. There was no way it would let this thief escape. It stretched out its claws and slapped at Ling Han. The distance was close enough. However, right at this moment, swoosh, the dog's eyes blurred, and Ling Han's figure was already nowhere to be seen. What was going on? The big fat dog hurriedly stopped and arched its nose to search everywhere. However, the little thief's aura was cut off and disappeared in front of it. This was too strange. It searched around but found nothing. Returning to its original spot, it sat down on its butt and scratched its neck with its claws. Its heart was full of confusion. Forget it, so be it. In any case, nothing was stolen by that little thief. As long as it didn't say anything, it would pretend that nothing had happened. As the saying went, it was better to have less trouble. Going home and sleeping was the most convenient. This fat dog's lazy attribute had the upper hand. Moreover, It also wanted to study that little suckling pig. It clearly sensed any energy fluctuations, and how its skin was so thick that it could even block its sharp teeth. It trotted all the way back. Where's the pig? Looking at that short tree again, it couldn't help but be dumbfounded. 13 leaves were missing. Looking at the traces of plucking, they were still very fresh. Obviously, they had been plucked away after it left. Not good, it had fallen into the trap of luring the tiger, luring the dog away from the mountain. When it thought of a certain person's whip, it couldn't help but tuck its tail between its legs. Hiss, should it consider digging a hole and hiding for a few days? After the big fat dog left, Ling Han hurriedly came out of the vitality-nurturing gourd and immediately ran down the mountain to meet up with Huan Shui. If that fat dog suddenly became intelligent and squatted at the place where he had disappeared, things would be very bad. Young master. When she saw Ling Han, Huan Shui finally heaved a sigh of relief. She hurriedly took out 13 leaves and handed them to Ling Han. Because time was tight, she had only plucked these few. Ling Han put the 12 leaves into the gourd and only took out one to study. The Academy had sent a paramount Bone Realm demonic beast to guard this tree, so it definitely couldn't be an ordinary item. However, in a short period of time, Ling Han could only come to one conclusion, and that was that the leaves themselves were extremely tough, and he couldn't tear them. Just this point alone was enough to prove that these leaves were extraordinary. I'd better wait until I get out and connect to the internet before I investigate. He kept the leaves and began his robbery plan. With his luck attribute at work, he could always meet people who were blind enough to take the initiative to rob him. He didn't even need to look for them himself. Then, the number of red cloud gems he had increased, almost reaching 100. Finally, the 10-day deadline was up. Everyone was sent out by the array and appeared on the square again. Most of them sighed. They didn't get a single red cloud gem, and obviously had no fate to enter Emperor Capital Academy. Those who have red cloud gems, stay. The rest of you, leave immediately. An extremely dignified old man from the academy said loudly. His voice was loud and clear, so loud that it hurt people's ears. The crowd started to leave, leaving only a few people behind. The people from the academy counted and couldn't help but have strange expressions. Their original intention was to pick out the 100 people who had the most red cloud gems, but there were only 79 people in front of them. Then as long as they verified whether they all had red cloud gems, they would be able to pass and enter Emperor Capital Academy. Take out your red cloud gems, the old man said. According to those who knew him, his name was Pan Tianyu, a senior instructor of the academy. He was famous for his fiery temper, and he was a paramount Bone Realm cultivator. Therefore, don't make him angry, or you would definitely be beaten up for nothing. Everyone took out their respective red cloud gems, ranging from 1 to 4 or 5. Even someone like Ji Qiuling, who had 20 veins, had only obtained 12 red cloud gems. Hong Tianliang had even less, with only 9. He had been robbed by Ling Han, so of course he wouldn't have a lot of red cloud gems. Pan Tianyu was surprised. This number wasn't right. This time, the academy had clearly put in 300 red cloud gems. Could it be that there were still more than half that hadn't been discovered? Reading on the phone was more refreshing. Chapter 3268. A Good Romance. BQG 6. Ling Han believed that his halo of hatred would definitely take effect and bring him trouble, but he was not afraid. Instead, he treated it as a form of entertainment. However, before this could take effect, Ling Han was called out to him. On the first day of school for new students, there would be a lecture as usual. Everyone was summoned to the martial arts field. The ground here was made of sand. Even if a paramount Bone Realm cultivator fought, there was no need to worry about damage. At most, they could just fill in the sand after the battle. There were not only 79 new students, but about 100. Because there were also Blood Transformation Realm new students, they did not need to be screened and directly entered the academy. Flag Master Lian. Ling Han's eyes lit up when he saw Lian Shuerong. Lian Shuerong also saw him and nodded. I knew I would definitely see you here. Ling Han laughed. Although he believed in Lian Shuarong's strength, the beast tide was too terrifying. He was naturally worried. Only now did he finally relax after seeing Lian Shuarong. The two of them were probably the only two survivors of the black-green flags. They were very sad when they talked about the situation that day. Ling Han. Someone walked over. It was Tuoba Tianhuang. He had not been screened, but he had appeared here. This could only mean one thing: he had broken through to the blood transformation realm. Ling Han nodded. Long time no see. Tuoba Tianhuang was silent for a moment. You have to break through to the blood transformation realm as soon as possible. I want to fight with you again. At the same age and realm, he had only lost to Ling Han. This was a stain on his record that he wanted to erase. Ling Han smiled. The capital is full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. There are many geniuses. There's no need to target me, right? He was not afraid to fight. Instead, he wanted to give face to the other party since they were both from Hidden Tiger City. He did not want to be traumatized by two defeats and never be able to recover. Tuoba Tianhuang smirked coldly and said, Ling Han, could it be that you are afraid? Ling Han sighed. Why didn't he accept his good intentions? All right. Since you want to fight, why don't we do it today? He said lightly. I won't bully you. I'll let you use only one hand. Tuoba Tianhuang almost lost his breath. You, a meridian opening expert, wanted to fight me, but you wanted to use a single hand. Although he had just entered the blood transformation realm, because he had cultivated 20 meridians in the illuminating pulse realm, his first transformation's battle strength was comparable to that of an ordinary third transformation. This is something Ling Han can compare to. You're too arrogant, he said coldly. Fine, I'll teach you a lesson first. I'll let you know the difference in cultivation levels. Defeating Ling Han by suppressing him in terms of cultivation level would naturally not make him happy, but he was truly enraged and wanted to teach Ling Han a lesson. Just as the two of them were about to make their move, they saw someone from the academy arrive. This time, a vice dean had come. His name was Sui Tang, and he was at the extreme bone realm. However, it was unclear which stage he was at. With this, Ling Han and Tuoba Tianhuang naturally could not fight anymore. The two of them returned to their own teams. Sui Tang gave a speech, the gist of which was to welcome the arrival of the new students. He hoped that they would work hard in their cultivation in the following period of time, because if the illuminating pulse realm could not break through to the blood transformation realm within 5 years, they would be expelled from the academy. The blood transformation realm had a 10-year deadline. If they did not break through to the extreme bone realm, they would have to leave. Therefore, the academy's disciples could not be over 40 years old. Sui Tang spoke a lot. At the beginning, everyone listened attentively, but because there were too many meaningless things, most of them became absent-minded. Only Ge Choling straightened his back from the beginning to the end, and did not make any small movements. All right, dismissed. Sui Tang finally announced that the lecture was over. He waved his hand and left. The students did not leave immediately, because for many of them, it was their first time meeting. Naturally, they had to get to know each other. After all, they would be living together for a long time in the future. It was fine if they could not become friends, but they could not become enemies. Some people were smooth and slick, like fish in water, while others were wooden and did not know how to socialize. Ling Han was just about to leave with Huan Shui when he saw Tuoba Tianhuang blocking his path. Want to run? Tuoba Tianhuang said disdainfully. Ling Han shook his head. He had not placed Tuoba Tianhuang in his eyes at all. So after the gathering ended, he had naturally left to focus on tempering his body. He wanted to quickly raise his physical strength to the level of 1,000,000 kilograms and then break through to the blood transformation realm. He hadn't expected Tuoba Tianhuang to insist on coming over to be slapped in the face. Fine, I'll help you. Make your move. Ling Han placed his right hand behind his back. If you can force me to use my right hand, then I'll consider it your win. Tuoba Tianhuang couldn't help exploding with rage. His eyes glared as if they were about to spit fire. You're too arrogant. He clenched his teeth. Is that so? Ling Han laughed. You've already been defeated by me, so it's not too much for me to use only one hand. Damn it! Tuoba Tianhuang roared in fury as he charged toward Ling Han. Bang! Who would have thought that someone would suddenly appear out of nowhere and block this attack for Ling Han? However, that person was clearly not a match for Tuoba Tianhuang, and he was sent flying. It was Ji Choling. If you want to exchange blows with my big brother, you'll first have to pass me. He crawled up, not the slightest cowardice. With this fight, the others all looked over. After knowing the situation, they all laughed and watched the show from the side. The academy didn't prohibit fighting as long as you didn't kill or cripple someone. But for a meridian opening expert to take the initiative to attack a blood transformation expert was strange. Was he asking for a beating? Furthermore, the other meridian opening expert was also arrogant enough. He actually said he would only use one hand. That was even more shocking. Where did his courage come from? One was arrogant, one was foolish. These two had actually passed the selection and entered the Imperial Capital Academy. That was practically lowering the academy's standard. Tuoba Tianhuang snorted, "You're not my match. Break through to the blood transformation realm first." Ji Choling still wanted to say something, but he was stopped by Ling Han. "He wants to challenge me. Don't steal his business." Ling Han smiled. Ji Choling didn't understand. Whose business am I stealing? Who's doing business? He was starting to get serious again. Ling Han ignored him. Instead, he looked at Tuoba Tianhuang and said, "Come. Chimph, don't tell me you're getting someone to help you again." Tuoba Tianhuang's expression was disdainful. Before Ling Han could reply, someone really did interfere. It was Lian Shuerong. She raised her hand and said, "We're all from Hidden Tiger City. We should work together and not fight amongst ourselves." Tuoba Tianhuang was still a bit wary of Lian Shuerong. She was already at the third transformation at such a young age. Although she wasn't as talented as him, she could still be considered a genius. He explained, "Flagmaster Lian, I just want to teach him a lesson so he won't be too arrogant. Otherwise, with his flamboyant nature, he'll cause trouble sooner or later. At that time, he'll lose face for Hidden Tiger City." Reading on the phone. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.